Okay, good morning. So one of the new features that I'd like to add is a question and answer session. I'd like to review some of the most common questions I get as a Jew and explain our answers. Certainly the most common question is, why don't Jews believe in Jesus? And secondly, why don't Jews believe that Jesus was God? I think the second one is less common, but I think it bears repetition. Both of these were discussed in a previous video of mine, but these will be just a brief synopsis of those answers. So why don't Jews believe in Jesus? Basically, we have nothing against Jesus. We don't hate Jesus. We don't want to suppress Jesus' teachings, etc. When people say that Jews hate Jesus, I always say, well, why do you hate the Prime Minister of Australia? And they'll say, I don't even know who the Prime Minister of Australia is. And I'll say, exactly. I mean, Jews and Jesus just are not in the same sentence, so to speak. But anyway, the easiest, most simple, and most concise answer is simply, Jews do not believe in Jesus because the world has not yet been redeemed. The picture of the world when the Messiah is here, as found in the prophets, simply has not transpired. Therefore, Messiah has not come. Whether that be Jesus, Bar Kokhba, etc., on down the line, we simply do not believe that Messiah has come. Nothing personal, Jesus. The prophets are very clear that when the Messiah is here, you can go to Ezekiel, I think it's Ezekiel 37, and there's an excellent synopsis of exactly what the world will look like when Messiah is here. But the Holy Temple will be rebuilt. The majority of the Jews will be back in Israel. But more so, the world will be at peace, so we won't have to worry about wars. And obviously that's not the case right now, nor has it been since Jesus or any of the other failed messiahs were here. So many times Christians will say, well, he'll do it when he comes back. Well, Mazel Tov, that's great. But why ask us to believe in something now when the actual criteria have not yet been met? I mean, I can prove to you that I'm the Messiah if that's your criteria. Go ahead and ask me to do something. When you ask me to do a miracle, I'll say, well, I'll do that when I come back. So I'm the Messiah, and you can't disprove it. And then oftentimes when we get to that part of the discussion, a Christian will say, well, but you haven't ever done any miracles. Well, there are miracles attributed to Jesus in the New Testament. Whether they actually happened or not, I can't tell you, but there were many miracle workers around Jesus' time who some claimed to be the Messiah, some did not, but they did work miracles. And even the New Testament and Old Testament both agree that miracle working is not a criteria for the Messiah, because false messiahs too can perform miracles. So basically, why don't Jews believe in Jesus? Because the messianic prophecies have not been fulfilled. One author I remember hearing said, well, make it like a wanted poster for the Messiah. So would being born of a woman, riding into Jerusalem on a donkey, and having a good friend turn against you, would those pinpoint exactly who the Messiah is if you were on a wanted poster? And the answer is clearly no. Hundreds, if not thousands, of people meet that criteria. So until the basic prophetic prophecies of what the world will look like when Messiah is here are met, the Messiah has not come. The second part of the question is, why don't Jews believe that Jesus is God? There's plenty of jokes about this subject that I won't go into, but basically we are warned in the Hebrew Scriptures not to believe or not to serve any God that our forefathers did not know. So if we did not meet this entity, this being, at Sinai, if our forefathers did not know of them, then we cannot serve them. Now, if you say, well, Jesus gave the Ten Commandments and met the Jews at Sinai, well then, great. Welcome aboard. We're glad to have you Christians with us, because we already met Jesus 3,500 years ago. And I have a friend who swears that all of the prophets believed in the coming Messiah. I have no evidence that the Jewish idea of a Messiah, and it is a Jewish idea, no other culture had it, came about before the exiles. You know, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, as they say. And, you know, I think that's one reason why we see so much religiosity in the black community, is that they've had it pretty darn tough. I think that I think that brings us closer to God, and so forth. So, but anyway, my point being is that if they did believe in a Messiah, well, then that's okay. But they certainly didn't believe in Jesus proper, and a belief or disbelief in Jesus of Messiah shows up nowhere in the Hebrew Scriptures as a commandment. I mean, there's nothing that says you have to believe in David the king or any of his followers. It's just not there. So whether one believes in the Messiah or not, it doesn't really make any difference, because that's like saying I believe that Joe Biden is the president. Well, of course Joe Biden's the president. There's no belief involved in it. So those are two of the most common questions that we receive as Jews. I hope that helps. I would like to point out that the thumbnail that I'm using is used under fair use as a nonprofit educational series, and I did leave the entire thing as found on the internet, including the copyright holder's name, so as not to have any infringements, and I do appreciate its use. All right, until next time, thank you.